I would remind you that there's no First Amendment right to conduct. There's a First Amendment right to speech, and the things that we're targeting in the bill are not speech. Again, if someone wants to stand across the street from my house and wave a sign on the sidewalk, they have every right to do that, and this bill won't have anything to do with that. But when it veers into conduct, and so the way we're going to approach this is through a hate crime kicker. So if you graffiti a building, it is a crime now. But if your motivation is hate, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in prison. If you want to litter, it's a crime right now. But if you litter and your motivation is a hate crime, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in jail. It is a crime right now to hang banners from an interstate. For obvious reasons, we don't want to distract drivers. But if you do that and you have a hate crime, a hate motivation, it will be a third-degree felony.
That's Florida State Representative Randy Fine. He's a Republican, and he's talking about this new bill that they put forward that will limit all this anti-Semitism that's been overflowing in the state. This, of course, if you're thinking like I was thinking when I saw this, aren't these the same people who invited this anti-Semitism to go overflowing in the state? They're flipping now a little bit, and the folks that they've invited in and feel very comfortable doing the things that they are doing aren't very happy with them anymore. In fact, these are some of those things that they made a nice, comfortable environment for them to do in. Watch.
Oh my God. Leave our country, go back to Israel. You know where you bomb Palestinian kids? Where we fund you stupid Jews? $8 billion a year? You look like a horse. You look like a Jewish horse. Uh-oh, Jew. Look at this. Watch this. Holy You're just trying to run us over, you filthy Jew. Don't touch his car. This filthy Jew. Don't touch his car.
You're live. 6 million viewers.
Say hi. Say hi.
White pride's when you think it. White power is when you live it. You can shove that finger up your rabbi's ass. He's a Jew. Look at him. Guess where you're going back to?
Go to the far side.
Sir, hey, I'm reporting a crime, you
Wow. They ran away.
I'm reporting a crime, you piece of
Cops work straight for the Jews. What are you, the police? Heil Hitler, you Heil Hitler.
So now Republicans are noticing all this stuff that's been going on for the past 2 years or so, if not even longer. It's increased. Now they're trying to reel it in, and now these folks are upset. Here's some of the things that they're doing here. By the way, the Anti-Defamation League said that there have been more than 400 instances of white supremacist propaganda being distributed in Florida from January of 20 until August of 2022. Jacksonville's seen other anti-Semitic incidents as well, such as when a swastika was projected on the side of CSX building in downtown Jacksonville. That was during a Jacksonville Jaguars game earlier this year. You guys maybe remember that. So this is what they've introduced to try and push back a little bit. It's called House Bill 269. And it will make it a hate crime. This is what Randy Fine was talking about, to hand out flyers containing hateful or discriminatory messages onto private property. The Florida Senate unanimously approved this bill on Tuesday. And if DeSantis signs that into law, distributing flyers or any other material with this intention to intimidate, threaten, or harass people based on religion or ethnicity will be considered a hate crime under this bill. Seems pretty straightforward, seems pretty easy, and if you're not a bigot, a hateful person, if you're not distributing anti-Semitic and other bigoted racist flyers around at people and trying to terrorize them, as we've seen these folks doing without any kind of pushback, you might get mad when you see this. And if you're not that person, you go, oh, that's cool, I guess that's for someone else. Here's someone who was touched by it, and I think they're admitting to something. Watch.
It always starts with, don't say the N-word, don't attack Jews, and then next it's don't criticize open borders or election fraud or forced injections, which they're now doing. Florida GOP declares war on the First Amendment, Infowars.com, to combat anti-Semitism. The free state of Florida is set to have the most oppressive hate crime laws in America in order to combat anti-Semitism. And anything else they say is hate. Base DeSantis just got your First Amendment rights revoked. There is no First Amendment right to conduct, Jewish Florida State Representative Randy Fine told the media earlier this week. Well, DeSantis better veto that, or I'm going to totally not support Ron DeSantis. That will be just a nail in the coffin too far if that's the case. But taking crimes that aren't felonies, that aren't associated with violence, and then saying we're going to make it a hate crime, 5 years in jail if you litter.
So there's Alex Jones there being very upset about this anti-hate crime bill that Republicans are pushing through. So they're pushing back on DeSantis. One more piece here before you jump in, because there's more, but John Minadeo, who was the first guy who was screaming at folks leaving that synagogue or temple there out in Florida, and he's the leader of the Goyim Defense League. He reposted a clip of Alex Jones saying all that stuff we were seeing, and he was going off on the proposed legislation, and he said it's the war on whites. The war on whites. Apparently, Republicans are finally fighting that war on whites. What's your thoughts here, bro?
It's so crazy because I don't think that what Alex Jones said in a vacuum is wrong, so to speak, in the sense that to go to jail for 5 years is pretty for littering is pretty retrograde and extremely reactionary. That is very true. However, what these folks have to understand is that anti-Semitism is not going to be tolerated. People understand how dangerous going down that path can be. And I can say for myself in my own life, I want to say I was an adult when I realized how rampant anti-Semitism was in New York, that when, you'd hear a certain type of white person, I mean, not in New York, in America, when you'd hear a certain type of white person mention something having a quote unquote New York sensibility, they were, in a veiled way talking about Jews. A lot of times when people are talking about Hollywood culture, they're talking about Jewish people, right? I wasn't made aware of this, but, because this stuff used to just sort of bubble under the surface. But now, when you got people like this, and I would say outside of Los Angeles and New York City, Florida, the state, is where most Jewish people live in this country. And these people have a voice, and you can't just come around acting as disgustingly and despicably as these lunatics and think people aren't going to deal with you. Of course, they're going to have some type of voice within the community and their policing and how their neighborhood is. Like, you come into somebody's neighborhood and just start harassing them in their vehicles, you're going to be dealt with. And I'm kind of happy, as reactionary as this stuff is, I'm kind of happy they came down hard on these dudes and be like, your very fringe behavior is beyond the pale, and watch us criminalize it.
Yeah, and I guess where the hypocrisy comes in for me is less when you've invited all of this fringe behavior because they need these supporters for their political aspirations.
But do they, JR?
They don't. They think they do.
I feel like these guys don't represent an actual, substantive amount of the population. They're loud. We notice them more than your average citizen who just goes about his business, not harassing people for being Jewish. But, I don't think it's a lot of these dudes, man. I think they make a mistake when they kowtow to these fools.
And this is why it happens, though. Let's jump down to the last side here, because probably Laura Loomer also brought up Ron DeSantis. So many of these folks, they're bringing up Ron DeSantis. He can't sell us out like this because they believed in him. If you're Ron DeSantis, you should ask yourself, why is it that these hateful people are believing in me to help carry their water for this type of stuff? This is maybe one of the reasons why, because they don't openly say, yo, I'm all down for the Nazis. Instead, when someone asks them, as they did here in January of last year, what about all these anti-Semitic protests and people going out and threatening and terrorizing people? Why isn't something else being done about it, considering this is your state, you're the governor? Instead of openly denouncing it, he instead did this.
These people, these Democrats who are trying to use this as some type of political issue to try to smear me as if I had something to do with it, we're not playing their game. Some jackasses, doing this on the street. First of all, state law enforcement is going to hold them accountable because they were doing stuff on the overpass. But I'm not going to have people try to smear me that belong to a political party that has elevated anti-Semites to the halls of Congress, like Ilhan Omar, that have played footsie with the BDS movement, that even have people in their party that have cavorted with Farrakhan.
So instead of condemning the actions as they're happening in your state, you start saying, what about that other party? So it's a veiled support system for them. You can't say it openly, but you definitely can't say that they're bad folks, and we need to stop this. It's the problem.
The sanctimonious strikes again. It's bad enough that basically once Trump decided this guy was serious about running for president, he's just burying this dude. Ron DeSantis' star, the light is dimming by the second every single day. And what's this guy's campaign come to, JR, when he's lost the Nazi vote? I mean, come on. What's a guy to do when he can't get Nazis to vote for him? This guy's a joke, man. I can't believe we ever thought he was a serious contender.
The only thing I worry about is once he loses the Nazi vote, he might start collecting a little bit of the middle ground Democratic vote that says, I'm not a lib. So I'm just saying, just want to point that out because sometimes those folks bleed over and think these guys are mainstream.